we started to look at TIE in terms of the bigger picture to do with our brief. So we knew we were studying Macbeth. We knew we were going to be doing an hour session with the year 11s on Macbeth. We had a wide spectrum of things that we could explore, and so we started to break this down. We looked at the development of the Macbeth and Lady Macbeth in terms of their characters, their motivations, how secretly underneath Lady Macbeth has these cruel, dark, manipulative intentions, and they come out later on, and this whole idea of Macbeth changing in terms of him actually being persuaded and tempted by the throne, and the things that Lady Macbeth says to him, and his character development too. So we looked at realistic scenes, we looked at the change from Macbeth being a hero to a villain. In two other scenes that we'd looked at previously and worked on, we looked at building Macbeth right towards the beginning. So we had a good class discussion about how we were going to put it all together to create the end goal and performance. So first of all, we looked at compiling everything that we have done, including like this potential exam dynamic with choosing 3 students as the main people who are gonna be basically representing the year 11s in terms of people they can relate to, who will ask all the questions hopefully that the year 11s have in their heads, and it will also sort of allow for this sort of relation, for the allow to like break the fourth wall and this type of communication, because it'll be like the facilitation is all happening for these students, and in turn for the year 11s and these fake students. We'll have a relationship established, and we might even split into teams so that each student has a team of actual kids to work with. So in terms of that, we looked at the student idea. Then we looked at forming it so that it was in a chronological order. So looking at them talking, the students talking about like they don't understand how Macbeth is a hero, they don't understand how he changed, and we've got this idea of a massive group facilitation technique. So we'll have loads of the facilitators on as all of us explaining what's happening next as we go through it, adding in this scene and another scene to contrast, and it's sort of to help along this timeline of events to where Lady Macbeth and Macbeth are in their change and transformation from what you may perceive as a hero to the audience and what you see obviously as a villain, also to their demise. So what happens to MacDonald right at the beginning to what happens to Macbeth right at the end is quite similar in its portrayal, in what it seems to show, and I think that this was purposely done, so trying to translate this so that it comes across really clearly to the year 11 so they can use it in their exams. The main purpose of all of this is to how I'll provide them with a revision that's different, that's easy to remember, the techniques that are easy to remember so they can apply it during their revision and then hopefully in their exams. So it's about constantly relating this to the idea of the exam, to the idea of the revision, and all things like that. So remembering the idea of this like exam style, remembering the types of questions you might get later on when we're looking at the scenes more specifically, adding in the idea of the facilitation to put across many interpretations, as this is a really good thing to show when you're in an English exam, the types of interpretations, the ideas that you can give. And so looking more at that end of things, we started to analyse some of the language throughout the piece, looking at 2 specific sections to do with Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. We're mainly looking at analysing the language so that we fully understand in order to facilitate and bring across an understanding to an audience, to the year 11s who would have studied it anyway. So we looked through the type of language and actually picked it apart analytically like you would in an English lesson. We evaluated how Shakespeare used the language, what it actually meant, and how we can physically show things more clearly. So there was a line about he would wear his newfound honour in new gloss, comparing it to the clothes he's wearing and comparing it to this newfound chain that he has around his neck, saying that he is Thane, and the idea that the sacrifices that he is willing to make to become king. It's all about the ideas that the language can be visually shown through things like a visual representation, and it's all to do with that contrast that we can clearly show. So we're later going to look at facilitation techniques and building upon that, because we're going to look at two different scenes to hopefully contrast. We're going to look at how we should act those to make them different, to add in that facilitation of understanding, key moments, key changes. We're also, as we've been piecing together the whole thing so far, we're going to analyse that and see how well it works in terms of a good starting point, as well as the whole idea with the exam students and things like that. So the main thing that we have to sort of analyse now is the use of language and relating it to that, and that's what we're building on for our next developments in this piece.